Greetings, you shadow-gripped organ snatchers, and welcome back to Until the Last Gasp Extreme Metal Podcast. This week I'm taking you through the discography of UK death metal as cancer. Hey guys, just interrupting myself here to make a quick announcement that the reissue for Hastia by legendary Australian death metal band Invocation is now available for pre-order on our Bandcamp page. The link will be in the description, and this is the first CD reissuing of this release in 20 years now, and it has never before released bonus tracks. Anyone unfamiliar with Invocation, it was comprised of members of Nun, Portal, Vomador and Crypt, so it's got a fairly pedigree line up there of some real diehard Australian extreme metal history. So that's what we're all about here, but definitely check that one out if you got some interest into that, and it will be released in February. So yeah, please do check that out for me. But anyway, back to me. I'm Fraser, and for those of you uninitiated and you want to get in contact with me, please get me on facebook.com/Until the Last Gasp podcast. Also, hear any previous episodes. You can find those links in the description underneath this episode. And this is also a podcast that is produced by P-Noise Productions. If you're after any audio production or even a polish to your own podcast, look up P-N-O-I-Z-E Productions. And I'm also uploading to Podbean, Spotify, YouTube, Rumble. And if you could like, share, and subscribe, it'd be very grateful, and it would help grow my channel, really. But enough of this shameless self-promotion. On with the episode. Cancer are a British death metal band formed in 1988 by drummer Carl Stokes, guitarist John Walker, and bassist Ian Butchernan. Quickly after the formation of the group, they put together their first 2-track demo called No Fucking Cover, recorded at Pitt Studio in Birmingham. The demo was produced by Stevie Young, which is the nephew of AC/DC's Angus Young, for a bit of Australian trivia there for you. And the engineer was Mick Hughes, who used to do the live sound engineering for Metallica. Their second demo was recorded in 1989 and was followed shortly by a bootleg live album called Bloodbath in the Acid, recorded at Wrexham Memorial Hall and released on the label Headache. They would secure a record deal with Vinyl Solutions, and in late 1989 the band would record their debut album, To the Gory End. The album was recorded over 4 days at Loco Studios in the town of Usk in Wales. I'm pretty sure that's how you spell it. It's USK, so forgive me again for my pronunciation. I'm very Australian. The record was mixed at Morrisound Studios in the United States, and the lineup for their debut album was John Walker on vocals and guitars, Ian Butchernan on bass, Carl Stokes on drums. The additional musicians for this one was John Tardy on backing vocals for Die Die, Tim Lewis was the keyboardist on Die Die and the title track To the Gory End. Production was Tim Lewis on engineering and Scott Burns for mixing and production, and the artwork was by Carl Stokes, which depicts a man with a machete driven through his head, which is a still image from the Dawn of the Dead movie. Photography for the inlays would be done by Phil Higgins, and it was released on the 15th of May 1990 with 9 tracks running at a total of 34 minutes and 59 seconds. Track listing for this one was number 1, Bloodbath, number 2, CFC, which is also Cancer Fucking Cancer, number 3, Witch Hunt, number 4, Into the Acid, number 5, Imminent Catastrophe, number 6, To the Gory End, number 7, Body Count, number 8, Sentenced, number 9, Die Die. Bloodbath. The second this song hits, you know what you're getting into with the drum production and guitar tone. This is some vintage death metal here with all the appeal of taking Death Leprosy and the first 2 Obituary albums and pretty much sewing them together into one magnificent, monstrous beast. The vocals come in with a gnarled rasp like a man gargling acid, and it's nothing too unique, but they're extremely well performed and they sound fucking rabid. There's nothing new here really for any fan of late 80s death metal that they won't already be apprised of, but it's got the right elements that get you foaming at the mouth for that nice, thick, muted, mid-paced guitar riffs. The speed shifts at pretty regular intervals, and it really drives the vocals with this song. The lyrics really nothing too special either for a scene like this when you compare them to, say, their countrymen like Carcass, but the delivery is so damn effective and the menace of them feels heightened, and everything in this song is just really well executed, proudly unsophisticated, pissed off, textbook death metal. A great opener and my favourite song from this record. Into the Acid. Great opening riff here with a count in on the drum beat that then rides into that hi-hat, and somehow that's just enough to get me pumped up listening to this one, where it's just such a catchy section and it's over so quick that when it pops back in I find myself just going, oh fuck yeah, that's the good shit right there. These guys really must have some shared DNA with Obituary, because they really both lock into that mid-paced moshing, I guess you'd say, groove. There's nothing really technical to speak of here. The fast sections are fairly basic. They kind of lean on that just up-down trem picking techniques, and the solos themselves are pretty frantic noodling with very little structure, but its overall feel is just what really takes over, and you can't deny its effectiveness. Really great song. Body Count. This is a great song that comes in with a really sweet mix of double kick and muted riff that, once again, Obituary comparisons are not without merit, especially when you know that John Tardy is a guest vocalist on the last song, Die Die. That opening moves into probably the most technical verse on the record that's got a nice, moderately mid-paced riff with a run that, compared to a more left-handed dominant playing over most of this record, helps it really stand out. There's a heavy thrash vibe in the midsection of this song that's, understandable considering the time and the skill level of the players. And the back end of this song reminds me of the writing on early Mortification records that I was listening to weeks previously. So if you're looking for death metal, chunky, simple, catchy riffs and song, then look no further than this one. Cancer would finish touring for their debut album, begin working on their follow-up at Reel to Reel Studios in Telford with engineer Tom Higley. By February 1991, they would fly out to Florida in the United States to begin recording their second full-length that would be titled Death Shall Rise at Morrisound Studios. They would recruit on lead guitar a legendary James Murphy, whose resume includes Agent Steel, Death, Disincarnate, Testament, Obituary. He's been everywhere, man. Anyway, the album would gain notoriety due to being banned in Germany, whose state body for censorship of works claimed it was likely to be dangerous to the youth, stating the cover art would incite youngsters to perform violence upon one another. Don't know how they got that, but somehow they did. James Murphy was the lead guitar for this one. Carl Stokes on drums, John Walker, vocals and guitar, and Ian Buchanan on bass. Guest musicians were Glenn Benton on backing vocals for Hung, Drawn and Quartered, and the production was handled by Scott Burns for producing and Mike Marsh and John Dent for mastering. Tim Hubbard did the photography and Junior Tomlin did the cover art. It was released on the 24th of May 1991 and has 8 songs that run for a total of 36 minutes and 2 seconds. Your tracks for this one are number 1, Hung, Drawn and Quartered, 2, Tasteless Incest, 3, Burning Casket, 4, Death Shall Rise, 5, Back from the Dead, 6, Gruesome Tasks, 7, Corpse Fire, and 8, Internal Decay. Hung, Drawn and Quartered. When you open a record with a song boasting vocals by Deicide's Glenn Benton, you're going to want to make sure it's one hell of an opener, and lucky for Cancer it is. The production on this record is noticeably more aggressive and punches just a bit harder on that mix. If you're expecting any progress musically, well, temper that a little bit, because here what you're going to get is more of the same, this time with probably a better grasp of the writing and the solos, which you instantly know are there thanks to James Murphy and his talents. Glenn Benton's backing vocals on the chorus make it huge, and this song really is going to kick some ass for anyone who's after some more straight-ahead, no bullshit brutality. Everything that worked on the last record is back here on display. Tasteless Incest. Not going to lie, with this record, I do firmly believe it is entirely front-loaded with its best songs at the start, and with this one they have all of their elements locked in, and coming straight after Hung, Drawn and Quartered, it's just a great mid-pace stomp that they do so well. But sadly, I do think the lyrics to these songs are just a bit too fucked to be enjoyable. I can listen to all kinds of shit about horror movie inspired stuff and things that sound disturbed that can put usual normies off, but songs about grandparents getting all gropey and going full Catholic priest on the grandkids, might have some political or social clout and graphic nature and details, and that's probably well-meaning, I guess, but it's really not a fucking chant-along song, Well, maybe if you're in bands like Anal Cunt or something. But musically, this is one of the best they have, with a ripper solo and a great performance all round. Just really don't dwell on those lyrics. You'll do yourself a favour. Internal Decay. Most of the songs in this record do tend to verge on the similar and very familiar after you start getting to the back end of the record. So separating a track from the herd really does come a bit of a task later on, as they do tend to try and push the tempos more, and I find that makes the drums feel like they're a bit laggy in parts. But what these guys do great is the more chunky groove riffs, and I was very pleased that the last song does have its strengths rooted back in the chunkier sound once again. These guys were really set for their next record to make an impact, and so they were just sitting on these two solid records, with James Murphy being the X factor on this last one, and they were going to be hit with some bad news. Murphy would leave the band in December of 1991 and form Discarnate, and he would be replaced by Barry Savage. They would finish the touring of USA, Mexico, Israel and Europe, and would record their third album, The Sins of Mankind, in December of 1992. Following its release through Vinyl Solutions in 1993, problems arose when drummer Carl Stokes was involved in an accident where his motorbike collided with a British telecom van, leading to the band enlisting Nicholas Barker from Cradle of Filth and Dimmu Borgir to finish the run of live shows. The lineup for this record was Carl Stokes on drums, Ian Buchanan on bass guitar, John Walker on rhythm and acoustic guitars as well as vocals, and Barry Savage on lead guitar. It was engineered with Simon Ephemery, and the cover art was a painting called Armageddon by Joseph Paul Petit. Released in June of 1993, it had 8 songs and a total runtime of 34 minutes 34 seconds. The tracks here were number 1, Cloak of Darkness, number 2, Electroconvulsive Therapy, number 3, Patchwork Destiny, number 4, Meat Train, number 5, Suffer for Our Sins, number 6, Pasture of Delight at the End, number 7, Tribal Bloodshed Part 1, The Conquest, and last track, Tribal Bloodshed Part 2, Under the Flag. Cloak of Darkness. This opener really knocks it out the park when it comes to capitalising on expectation. They really had stepped up their riffing on this record, and it maintained that stomping mid-paced obituary-esque groove. But this time, instead of cruising heavily into the trem pick sections, there are some really great transitions and melodic runs that almost move back into thrash, but you wouldn't really give a shit because they're really good. The vocals on this have shifted over the past 2 records to a more, well, I guess from a rasp to more of a bark, but they're still just as pissed off as ever, and they may be a letdown for some people on the production on this record after leaving Morrisound, but with a bit of a digital sound, I guess you would say this time round, but it still packs a decent punch, and I find the drum production kind of fits better on this record overall as opposed to the last record. But the biggest trade-off here, losing those leads of James Murphy for some better riffs, and I guess if that's your trade-off, I love your work, James, but I'd definitely make that trade because these riffs are insanely enjoyable to listen to. Pasture of Delight, The End. Acoustic intro on a cancer song. Yep, it happened. The caveman looks to be evolving, and hell, why not give the man a wheel and some fire? That poor fella's been doing the hard road of Chuggernaut, trying to pummel out a result every go around, so changes here really help give this record its place. Where the previous two, like the gory end, and you'd say the other one was a gory end part 2. This one still has plenty of that aggression. It's just got a great balance of straightforward brutality and deviates with melody and nice hooks that makes this one a great fucking listen. Not one to be disappointed and coming towards the back end either, because you're not really slugging through a back half without its own standout tracks either, and this is definitely one of them. Tribal Bloodshed, Part 1 and Part 2. Beginning with a crushing riff this good, if you think you're into some killer shit to come, you'd be definitely correct. I'm going to put these two together here just because, well, it's my fucking show, so I'll do what I want. But honestly, I just think they work so well together, and Part 1 is their best fast song for my taste off this and any other record they've done. Really got its hooks in me, and I was all on board and just loving how pissed off and well performed it was, and I've not enjoyed that part of their sound as much on previous records, so it was really great change here to kind of really get into what they were doing with their fast riffing. And Part 2 is a great return to their muted crunch riffing as, you follow up, which is a really great dynamic shift from that fast to back mid-pace crunch. These guys really had nailed their songwriting on this one, and goddamn, if they weren't ready for some... knowing what's coming is really disappointing. Who wants more cancer? Who wants cancer? Out of context, that sounds a bit fucked, but who wants some more cancer like this? Everyone does, but with what we got next, we got some really bad news on the horizon musically. In 1994, Cancer left Vinyl Solution to sign to a major label, along with Morbid Angel being one of the first death metal bands to do so. With the backing of a major label, East West, they entered the great Linford Studios in Milton Keynes to record their fourth full-length called Black Faith. The record would be mixed at Pink Floyd's Britannia Row Studios, and Black Faith received mixed reviews, with some comparing its material to mid-period Metallica, others considered it a poor man's artwork. An even better comparison would be dog shit and stale jizz in a gym sock. This is a record that should not exist, and now with that fair and balanced opinion, let's poke some sticks into this steaming turd. The lineup for this album was John Walker on acoustic and rhythm guitars as well as vocal, Barry Savage on lead guitars, Ian Buchanan on bass, and Carl Stokes on drums and percussion. The production was handled by Simon Efremi, and it was released on One Dark Day in 1995 with 11 tracks that ran for an agonising total of 46 minutes and 50 seconds. The tracks for this one were Ants, Nemesis Ride, Who Do You Think You Are, Face to Face, Without Cause, White Desire, Kill Date, Temple Song, Black Faith, Highest Orders, Space Truckin', which is a Deep Purple cover, and I Save Me From Myself. Definitely sounds like we're out of death metal territory now, doesn't it? Album overview. I Can't Do This record, coming after Sins of Mankind. The following three, solid as hell death metal bulldozers, and then you side up with a record that's just eating chocolate dip turds. I get that the 90s, a lot of bands went a different way and indulged some elements that were being popularised by grunge at the time, but and I guess you'd say with this one too, maybe even the industrial scene, which was gaining a lot of traction at the time, but who was demanding their death metal adopts these sounds that dilute down their sound? Like the next wave for bands like Cryptopsy and all those were, they went out of their way to keep the scene alive as everything, I don't know, I guess it started to go Paradise Lost, I guess. Like, these guys decided they were going to go out and make their own draconian times or something. Like, it sounds like a cut-rate Killing Joke, especially looking at the cover, or something that She Hud from New Zealand would be making. And it's just so misguided, and I hope this was a label decision, but even so, it's the band went along with it, and it really killed their career for the better part of the next decade. And don't get me wrong, this isn't probably a wholly unlistenable record, and it will have its fans in a wider metal community. I'm just pretty sure that what its purpose was to gain some new fans and new listeners, but what they in turn were doing was hemorrhaging the old fans from their extreme metal fan base. So if I was being objective, I'd say that if they dropped the name of this and put it as a side project, it realistically would have fared better and be looked on a bit more favourably. But as a Cancer record, this just doesn't stack up. After finishing their European tour, Cancer called it a day, citing a lack of faith from certain key individuals in the industry and major label bullshit, which kind of feels a bit like a cop-out after an album like this, which is this unpalatable, really. I can't imagine anyone demanding more of the same, so maybe a break was in order. During the 2000s, many metal bands were all being unearthed from their graves that they or the industry had dug for them in the 90s. Cancer would be one of those that would return without original bassist Ian Butcherton and release Spirit in Flames, the band's fifth record, and it was received with more of a whimper than a celebrated hurrah upon return. And as such, it kind of just gets forgotten by time now. Not particularly strong in its songwriting and production, this album is now more of just a little curiosity for any collector out there. But thankfully, this is not the end of the band either, as they would disappear again after its release, but then they would return at the beginning of the 2010s. Spirit in Flames was recorded, mixed and mastered at Philia Studios, Henley on Thames, England. The lineup was John Walker on vocals and guitars, Dave Leach on guitars, Adam Richardson on bass, and Carl Stokes on drums. It was recorded by some bloke with a face and God knows who, and released on June 20th, 2005, with 9 tracks running a total of 39 minutes and 3 seconds. Tracks for this one are number 1, Insides Out, number 2, Mindless Reactions, number 3, Spirit in Flames, number 4, Hell House, number 5, Solar Prophecy, number 6, Devil's Playground, number 7, Fistula, number 8, Seance, and number 9, Ouija board. That'll do. Devil's Playground. This album's production, while not absolutely terrible, is quite odd, and with its vocal performance being more of a yell than a growl, and its musical approach being more 2000s groove metal than death metal, you'd be forgiven if you didn't recognise that you're listening to a Cancer record. This record sounds more like a Biohazard or late 90s Sepultura to my ear, and if I was to pick any highlights of this one, I'd say possibly Devil's Playground, just because the riffs are pretty cool, and I think with a bit of a death metal makeover, they could have made a good song. Once again, this may not appeal to a extreme metal audience, probably more for a wider metal audience. But, this is just not me. This is just not for me personally. Ouija. After a not so interesting intro, this song is another one with a few good chops that, with a bit of a facelift or a bit of a botched surgery, may have been able to be turned into a real hideous death metal track that we could have been proud of. But coming in at the very end of this record and after a marathon of tired old man yelling, I'm just way too beyond caring to really, give him the rehab treatment on this one. I just want Cancer to sound like fucking Cancer. Where along the line did they forget Cancer? Fucking Cancer, I don't know. But just a quick note here too, no songs off Black Faith or Spirit in Flames will be on the playlist, as they are not on Spotify, and I think even the band is letting these records fade mostly into obscurity, and I'm not opposed to letting it happen. On the 12th of September 2013, it was announced that the original lineup of Cancer, along with Barry Savage on lead guitar, would reunite to promote the first 3 albums being reissued. They were also planning to make a number of festival appearances and would only play songs from those records. Barry Savage would leave the band once again in 2014, and on the 22nd of September 2015, Cancer revealed on their Facebook page that they had been working on new material, and in July of 2018 they signed to Peaceville Records and would release their 6th album titled Shadow Gripped. The lineup for their record again would be John Walker on vocals and guitars, Ian Buchanan on bass, and Carl Stokes on drums. Guest musicians on this one would be Simon Efme from Absolute Power on backing vocals on track 3, Pete Giles from Pombagira on backing vocals for also track 3, Raquel Walker from Liquid Graveyard on backing vocals track 6, Andrew Lyle's orchestration and arrangements for track 6, and Anders Nyenstrom from Catatonia and Bloodbath as for lead guitar on track 3. This was released on the 2nd of November in 2018 with 10 tracks running a total of 43 minutes and 53 seconds. The tracks on this one were number 1, Down the Steps, number 2, Garroter, number 3, Ball Cutter, number 4, Organ Snatcher, number 5, The Infacidal, number 6, Half Man, Half Beast, number 7, Crime So Vile, number 8, Thou Shalt Kill, number 9, Shadow Gripped, and number 10, Disposer. Ball Cutter. Ball Cutter is the second single off the record and probably the most energetic of the first 3 songs, I would confidently say. Also, with this record, we can be thankful that we have the Cancer of old back. I mean, the raspy barks may be a bit more husky. The technique and the songwriting may be a bit more primitive, but fuck, that's Cancer. And, so them getting back in touch with their roots after 2 decades just swinging blindly in the weeds is really, really reassuring for the fans of the band. The lyrics for Ball Cutter are probably some of the most ridiculous that they've ever had and giving me a bit of a laugh, but I really did enjoy this one, and the solo from Anders Blackheim of Catatonia was pretty damn cool addition too. Just with this one you got to think, well, welcome back Cancer, but now address your swampy guitar production for something a bit more with chunk, and then we'll be in business. Shadow Gripped. Another one off this record that's got a bit more of an X factor, probably why it's the title track, I would say, but has to be said that there are more weighty, muted, down-picked riffs on this one. That's what I kind of love about this band. I don't really want to shit on the band for, having a positive step in the right direction, but the simplicity of their sound here, which I have praised, and it has been inspired and driven before, but when it becomes more formulaic, which it does tend to do on this record in some spots, it just becomes a bit lacking in substance from track to track, which leans heavily on those trim-picked verses to kind of carry you through to the next solo or some kind of variation of what they're doing song-wise. So loving them for being back for sure, and taking a step back to go forward was definitely the right way to go. I'm just really hopeful that the next record will be something that we can really hold up and cheer to the sky for their absolute triumphant of return. But yeah, definitely no knock. I just feel that the energy of this one probably wasn't quite there, but finding your firm footing on ground in death metal again after such a long time. I guess we just got to hope that they've been in the studio during these lockdowns and the world being in turmoil as it is, and then we can have something to look forward to from these guys in 2022. But that's it for Cancer. Do yourself a favour and grab those first 3 records though, because those are absolute classics, and you will find so much to enjoy on those if you're looking for some really primitive caveman balls death metal that just goes for the throat. Anyway, this is where I would usually have an album review, but I'm going to do something a bit different this time. I'm going to put a highlight on a young upcoming band from my local scene. They're called Nembutolik, and they started in 2017. They play a style which I'd say best described as death thrash with a bit of dash of hardcore in there as well. They describe their sound as Frankston CVNT, which I think you can all piece together, CVNT metal, and that'll stop me having to beep that out on YouTube. Anyway, what they've got here on offer is that they've just released their new video single titled Backbone, which is their first music since their self-titled independent demo from 2018. These are some young blokes that really go hard with their live shows, and this video is a great representation of that. I'll also add that if you have the time to let your fingers do a bit of walking around on YouTube, look up their live video from Flippin' the Bird 2020, which is a small festival we have down here in Frankston. Plus, we have the link to the video there for Backbone in the comments, or the description of this video. So go give those guys some support and share them around, because we love to see some local talent from Frankston get up there. And yes, I've absolutely put myself out and outed myself as I'm a born and bred Frankstonite. So if you can do us a favour and support the local boys, they're Nembutolik, spelled Nembutolik, and Backbone is out now on YouTube and Spotify, so get that in ya. Next week I'll be looking once again in my own backyard and put another spotlight on some real killer shit from the Australian scene of old. I'll be covering the legendary Melbourne death metal band Bramelin, so I hope you can join me for that one. But until next time, stay safe, play it loud, and support metal until the last gasp. Fuck, I'm dying on this one today, guys. Sorry about that. Catch you next time.